Welcome to Positive Single Parenting. My name is Amanda Cote, and I will be your host today. I have Arizona Lowe as our wing woman. She will be reading our comment tracker and keeping track of what everybody has to say. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to comment and let us know what your feedback is. This is our first show, so we're real excited to get this started and see what we have in line for us. I am a parent of three beautiful children. I have a 6-year-old son, a 4-year-old daughter, and a 1-year-old daughter, so I got my hands full. Um, and part of the goal of having this show is to help parents come together and find good ways to handle situations, no matter what you're going through. It's always good for me to get advice from other people and to help anybody else out that I can. I'm always looking to find answers and solutions, and you can never go wrong by researching too much, I believe. So today we have a special guest. Her name is Avital Schreiber, and she will be helping us out today and giving us her advice and opinions on some things.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. So Avital, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So I am also a mom to two little boys. I have a 16-month-old and a 3.5-year-old. And, you know, before I became a parent, I wasn't even sure I wanted to be one. All parents just seemed so exhausted. They weren't doing such a good marketing job for the job. It didn't seem like it was a lot of fun. So I was really concerned before I became a parent about, you know, why I was doing this, what it would be like, how I would not just be talking about getting my kids to sleep and away from me all the time, but instead actually enjoying them. So I began to research a lot. I read a lot of parenting books. I devour it all up, and that is why my blog's name is the Parenting Junkie, because I'm a junkie for this stuff. And eventually, it became such a you know, mainstay of my conversation with people that I began to break it down, all the things that I was learning in video format, because not all of us love to read and wade through articles. And so that's what the Parenting Junkie is all about. Is really mostly videos that are hands-on and helpful, hopefully, advice for myself and other parents. And my real focus is mindful, conscious, peaceful parenting. All gentle methodology, not really any discipline in the traditional sense, but a much more conscious and peaceful, respectful approach to children.
Yes. And that's how we found Avital. She has a blog, and it is called The Parenting Junkie. And one of her articles, she was talking about triggers. And as a mom and as a dad, everybody has their moments where they just want to pull their hair out, or they feel like they're going to explode and under so much stress and frustration. And so we found some key points in her blog on how to handle that. So I'd like you to please tell us about some of those triggers and where they come from.
Yeah, definitely. So I think triggers is a huge topic for all parents, and it's actually slightly under the radar. It's a little bit unaddressed, I think. Maybe it's even taboo, because when we're triggered, we often get into a state where, you know, we can really be our worst selves when we've been triggered. We can lash out, we can yell, we can use words and language that we would never otherwise use. We might even get violent, and you know, and then we're left over with this residue feeling of guilt and shame and confusion. And that's not to even mention what our child's just been through, the fear and the, you know, the guilt and the confusion that they're experiencing. Because what usually happens when we're triggered is there's some event. It could be a smell, it could be an image, a sensation that's happened. And what's actually happening, the reason it's called a trigger, is because it triggers in us a past event that we experienced. So it sends us back, you know, light years back into another situation in a different time with a different person that was painful for us, that was humiliating for us, that was somehow shameful.
So that's kind of like when all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, I sound just like my mom.
Exactly. Exactly. Although when we are able to say that, we're probably not being triggered in that moment, because when we're triggered, we're so uptight, we're so upset, we're so riled up that our bodies are literally responding as if there's a danger. We're going into fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? So we're either paralyzed, we're freezing, we're not able to do anything, or we're fighting, that's yelling, throwing things, getting aggressive, or we're in flight mode, and that's when we just lock ourselves in the bathroom. Don't speak to me, don't talk to me, I'm not here. So those are kind of our reactions to that event. But what's interesting to note here is that really, if you threw another parent into the same situation, they may not respond that way. We're most likely really overreacting to the situation. And we could take an example, for example, like mess. Mess is an example that some people can handle nonchalantly, no big deal, we'll just clean it up. Oh, that's okay, baby, you spilled all the Cheerios on the floor, let's clean it up together. And another parent will explode. How could you do this? Don't you love me? Don't you care about me? Bringing in all sorts of irrelevant thoughts and feelings to the situation, but that's what they're truly experiencing. And when we dig deeper into that parent's psyche, and I'm no psychologist, but I know this of myself to be true, that when you dig deeper into the events that I have been triggered by, you'll find a historical and archaeological dig into my history. You'll find something that was unresolved, that was painful for me in the past, and now I'm responding to my child in the same way either that I was responded to, or in the same way that I wanted to respond, that I needed to respond in the past, defending myself or attacking, but I couldn't. So it's a real unresolved issue. It's residue. And that's kind of where all triggers come from, I think.
Yeah. So how do you deal with those triggers?
So that's like $1 million question, I think, for all of us, because none of us want to be in that position where we lose control. But I think we could take a two-pronged approach to dealing with this, right? So the first thing we might discuss now is how to prevent triggers, how to prevent getting triggered. And there's a lot of different things that we need to do, and this is actually really hard work. It's hard, emotional work, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it when we feel like we're a more complete version of ourselves, a more healed version of ourselves. So the first thing that we really want to do is dig deep inside ourselves and start to ask ourselves these questions, start to unravel, start to relive painful experiences of the past. And that's why this can be so emotionally draining, because we're actually exposing ourselves again to those experiences or to those relationships. But in talking it through with a close friend, in talking it through with a therapist, in journaling about it, writing it down, we can begin to understand what has happened. We can begin to understand our story, both in the practical sense of what actually happened and in the narrative, emotional sense of how we tell our story. What do we choose to emphasize? What has remained with us? What feelings? Do we feel like we're a victim? Are we holding on to that somehow, that we are still a victim, even now? For many of us, that's it. It's victimizing ourselves, right? And we felt like a victim as a child, and we still feel like a victim in the hands of our children. And it might be other things. Do we feel like an aggressor? Were we always made to be felt that we are the aggressor, that we are the problem? And are we again becoming the aggressor with our children? So, trying to just understand is really the first step. And one of the most amazing ways to do this is, apart from therapy, which I highly recommend to every human being on the planet, but I think is also reading about these issues, understanding the human brain, understanding our emotional makeup. We have such good information about this these days. People really know. People really know how we're built, how emotions work. So learning about it, and one of my favorite books for that is anything by Dan Siegel, Dr. Dan Siegel. So The Whole Brain Child is wonderful, and then even deeper is Parenting from the Inside Out. And this is a book that will take you on a journey to understanding your triggers and how to overcome them. So that's kind of my first part of the answer. That's, thinking about it, understanding it, telling your story. The better self-understanding we have as parents, the better parents we can be.
Yeah.
So would you suggest, I'm sorry, I'm wanting to delve a little bit deeper. So would you suggest, let's say you do blow at your child, okay? Would you suggest at that point to sit and think, or to even maybe try to write down what triggered you?
Yes. Yes. I wouldn't necessarily say that you could do that while you're in flight or fight mode. When your heart is pumping and your palms are sweaty and you're angry and you're about to blow at anything, or you're in the middle of shouting, you can't sit down and reflect. Your brain is not working that way. You're in a primitive brain mode, and you can't just use that higher functioning of, well, let me self-reflect. So it's not going to be in that moment. In that moment, the most important thing is to do no harm. The most important thing is to do no harm. Is to somehow control yourself, and that might be removing yourself or your child from each other. But yes, sitting down and reflecting when we've behaved in a way that we're not proud of and in a way that we don't want to repeat is critical. And it's so overlooked in our society, right? In Western society, we don't meditate. We don't talk to the elders. We're alone. We're all these parents alone in a room for hours on end, for years on end, locked in a room with our children. That's very unhealthy for us, and we need that time to decompress and to understand what's happening.
I'm really glad that you mentioned talking to your elders, because, you know, I sit back here sometimes as a grandma, and I want to be able to tell my kids, you know, I did it this way and I messed up. I should have done this, you know. And sometimes they'll listen, and sometimes they will just shut me out because, oh, Mom, you didn't do it right. You know, but we learn and we grow even at my elderly age.
Well, the best thing, I think, is to go to people who have learned from their experiences. You have some of the best information because you've been there. You know what happened, and you know the mistakes you've made. So for you to go back to somebody and say, hey, you know, this is the best way to do this. You know, maybe here's a different solution to the way you're handling this. I've been there. You know, I've made mistakes. Now here's what I can share from those mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's so sadly overlooked. We've become more and more isolated in Western culture. You know, we no longer live with the extended family, with cousins, with aunts and uncles, with grandparents around. I believe in my heart that that is how children were made to be raised, amongst a larger tribe. And I think that that's why a lot of us are facing very singular challenges that the rest of history wouldn't really know what we're talking about, because they weren't there. They were raising children as a clan. So you weren't, you know, burnt out and exhausted, and you didn't need to lock yourself in the bathroom because there were other people taking up the slack. Now, I don't mean to romanticize history. Obviously, you know, there were a whole host of problems in every single generation and every single location, and there are wonderful things about raising children today. But just that specific point, I think, is missing, and each one of us, we can work to rectify that. You know, even using technology, if we need to Skype the grandparent or adopt a grandparent in your neighborhood or whatever it is, you know, there are lots of people around us who can support us through this. Doing this type of emotional work on your own is, I don't know, it's close to impossible. It's not how we're designed, you know?
Well, and trying to do it alone when you're raising children, too. I mean, you know, I didn't even start my work until after my kids were raised, which is really sad. And, you know, and I'm encouraging all my kids to start now.
Yeah. Never too late, but never too early also to start. I agree. I agree. And yeah, it's not something we leave space for as parents, and I think that's, you know, I don't want to blame, but I slightly blame our, you know, popularized culture about what parenting is and isn't. The whole notion of, oh, you're going to be so exhausted and you'll never have time for yourself, and you'll, you know, and your kids will make you want to tear your hair out, and all of that stuff is what we hear. We don't actually hear the other side, you know, the wisdom, the joy, the connection, the love, the really important stuff about parenting. Not much room for that. So the soul searching and the spiritual side of really finding, you know, peace or connection or true joy, true unconditional love, you know, that's work. That takes real work. It needs tools. It needs help. It needs advice. It needs research. And you know, I'm kind of rallying behind putting that at the forefront of the parenting conversation.
Definitely. I think recognizing that this is going on inside you is a huge step. And even people that don't have blood family or anything like that. Find somebody that you can talk to, that you can even vent to, because everybody needs somebody, you know. And I think being honest and forefront and recognizing things is a huge step in being able to change the way things are running.
It absolutely is, and it's the first step. And like you say, it doesn't have to be a relative. It can be a good friend, a neighbor, and it can be a journal. You know, it really can be your creative outlet. If it's dancing, if it's writing, if it's music, you know, expressing whatever it is that you need to express in a healthy manner will help you no end in not expressing it in an unhealthy manner with your children. So yeah, so this was kind of the first part of overcoming triggers, is all that self-understanding, and recognizing it is a huge step. Unfortunately, it's never enough. We can know a lot of things about ourselves. We can know that we have a problem. It doesn't necessarily mean we're managing to change it, just knowing that. So I think that there are a wide range of ways that we can change behavior. But all of them take a certain amount of consciousness and effort. So I go through this in the post that you mentioned on my blog, but I'll bring up some of those ideas and some other ideas here. But I really love this first step, which is taken out of simplicity parenting methods, and it is, when you want to make a change in your life, take a few moments to imagine what that change is going to look like. Okay, so let's take the example we started before of the parent who is triggered by mess. Every time their kid spills, they blow up, okay? And say she's done soul searching and she's understood that when she was a child, mess wasn't tolerated and there was an emotional link to mess, and when she made a mess, her mother saw that as a slight on her, you know, parenting, as if she doesn't respect her or doesn't care about her, and it became this whole emotional knot, and now whenever there's a mess, she gets stressed out and lashes out. So she's understood that, but it still triggers those feelings inside her, right? So what she needs to do now is sit down and imagine another response, another scenario, a different situation. Because sometimes we can't even bring up thought of how it could be. What could be different? We haven't seen at home. We're not privy to seeing these kind of events at our friends' houses, because when we're in front of each other, we're all perfect, right? So how could it be different? I'm about to blow, and this is really upsetting me. What else can I do? And then you might really come up with some ideas, and you might write these down, right? Okay, maybe I'm going to take 5 deep breaths. Maybe I'm going to keep my voice very soft. Even if it's artificial, I'm not going to allow myself to yell, just to send my body the signal that this is not an emergency. Maybe I'm going to hang up little Post-it notes in my home saying, everything's cool. Keep your cool. You know, what are the things that I could do? How is the, you know, what is the reality going to look like when I'm not exploding? And then imagine the conversation you're having with your kid. Are you able to get down at eye level? Are you able to look them in the eyes? Are you able to wait a second and say, wait, the most important thing isn't the spilled Cheerios. That will get cleaned up and it will be okay. That is not an emergency, right? The most important thing is, how do I convey to my child in a peaceful and respectful manner that I would prefer they don't spill the Cheerios, you know? So can I get down at eye level? Can I connect to them? Can I say, I'm having a really hard time staying calm because mess makes me anxious? You know, can I be honest about what's really going on inside of me? Can I be honest about my craziness? Mess makes me a bit crazy. I know that's not okay. I'm working on it. Can you help me, because this is making me feel super upset? Can we get a dustpan and brush together and clean it up? Is that okay? And your child might say no, you know, and that might trigger you even more and you get really more upset, but you are imagining the state where, wait a minute, I am zen, I am calm, I can handle this without blowing, right? And you're imagining that state and you're ingraining it into your brain as if you've seen it, as if it's some example that someone set you. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's almost like the law of attraction with something that really matters rather than money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you invite in the situation that you believe you want, that you believe can happen. You manifest it.
Yeah. So how, when you do blow and when you do have those moments and you get out of control or carried away, how do you resolve that? How do you go back and fix that?
Yeah. And I don't know this to be true, but I believe that probably no matter how much work we do, there's always more work to be done. I read this stuff every day. I'm so invested in it. I do a lot of spiritual and emotional work and soul searching and therapy, and I still let fly at my kids often on an ongoing basis. And I think it's important for us all to admit that publicly, to let it be a part of the discourse, But yes. I want to go back to Dan Siegel's book about this, because he calls these ruptures. And ruptures are basically, a tear in the fabric of your relationship. So when you've let fly at someone, when you've humiliated them, or shouted at them, or scared them, you have created a rupture in your relationship. Now, relationships are a little bit like skin. They can be wounded and they can heal. And there's a very wide range of how well, how quickly, how fast they heal, and whether or not it leaves a scar, right? So I think that the key to any rupture is the repair. Okay, so when you've been triggered, you've spoken or behaved in a way that's created a rupture with your child. Now the question is repair, and repair is going to look unique for each relationship, because we're all different. But I can tell you what it sometimes looks like in my relationship with my son. So if I've behaved in a way, I yelled at him, I said things I didn't mean. Maybe I even shoved him, and then I would come to him when everything is a little bit calmer, or even if I can manage it before a lot of time has passed. So I think as soon as you're able to stop that behavior, but not longer than that, because you don't want to let time just pass as if that was okay and you can ignore what you've done. You can't. It's really important that your child knows that. But on the other hand, if you're going to start apologizing and then yell again because you're still so angry, and I've done this before, I've said, I'm really sorry, but that made me so mad. That's not helpful, right? Then your child is still scared, and you're not actually repairing. So once you're able to truly apologize, and you might need to take a time out, and if you can communicate that to your child, that's great. You might need to say, I'm sorry, I need 2 minutes in the bathroom. Please, I know you're upset. I'm also upset. I can't talk right now. I'll be out in 2 minutes.
That reminds me of when Hope and I, one of my daughters, we would when she hit 16, it was like rubbing sandpaper together with this child. And I actually would tell her, we would be going at it, and I'd know it needed to calm down. And I would actually tell her, let's both take 5 minutes time out in our rooms. I'm going to go to my room. You go to your room. Let's think about it and come back out and talk calmly.
Yeah, we all need that. We need that with our friends, with our mothers, with our partners, whoever it is, and we need it with our kids. And I think the important thing there is not to make punitive, not to say, that's it, you're in a timeout to your room, but rather to say, I need to calm down. Otherwise, I'm going to yell again. I know that I need to take a few deep breaths. And here we're modeling for our children what healthy anger management looks like, what taking responsibility looks like, what being the adult in the room looks like, saying, I just behaved like a 3-year-old, but actually I'm the adult, so I'm going to now calm myself down and calm the situation down and take the time out. So once you've taken that time out, you've had a shower, you've gone a little walk, whatever it is that you need to do, maybe you have someone there who can be with the kids, maybe you don't. Maybe it's just, I'm going to sit on the couch, can you sit on that chair? Maybe if your kids, need to be there and they're young. And then once you've done that, it's really about connecting and apologizing. And there are lots of great literature out there on what a sincere apology looks like. When most of us are terrible at it. Most of us like to brush off what we've done. Well, I'm sorry, but I was really, really tired, So a good hint for that is if there's a but after the I'm sorry, then it's not a good apology. I'm sorry, but. Or if you're saying I'm sorry, but actually you're blaming the other person in the middle, you're saying I'm sorry, but when you do that, I can't handle it. That's not a sincere apology either. A sincere apology is saying, I am sorry that I behaved that way. I am sorry that I said X, Y, and Z, and being specific about what it is you're sorry about, what it is you're taking responsibility for. I should not have responded that way. I am going to work on responding differently in the future. I hope you forgive me. Sorry,
so you added the key in there of what you were going to do in the future, not to do it again, which I think is huge in a sincere apology.
I agree. I agree.
Our kids are watching us, and they are learning from us. So I think it's important because they're going to take the way we react outside to this world and apply that to relationships that they have, whether that be another kid at school, whether that may be a relationship in the future. They are learning from us. So if we learn how to compose ourselves and use things sincerely and properly, they're going to take that and they're going to use that themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. And what we usually do with apologies is we say you're sorry. No, you're going to say you're sorry now. You did that and you have to say you're sorry, right? We force these apologies. And poor kid, I'm sorry, you know, and of course he's not sorry. And we're not really showing what sincere apology looks like. It's not, that doesn't repair anything, right? So
that is a good point. There's so many times I tell my, if my son hits his sister or something, I'm like, you need to apologize to her before you come out of that room, and you're so right about that, and I never thought about it like that.
Right, because that's just ingrained in our society. It's forced apology, but true apology isn't forced. It comes from sincerity, and it takes our children years and years. Look at the adults around you. How many of them know how to apologize? It's really unrealistic to expect that of young children, or of older children as well. So the only real way is to see this as a long haul view, that apology after apology, repair after repair that we model in our relationship with them, they will eventually learn to do that in their own relationships. And also to respect it when they don't want to apologize, when they don't feel sorry right now. It's kind of like just giving them the tools that when they truly feel that way, we support their ability to apologize. But yeah, I think back to our point earlier of saying how you plan to do things differently in the future is important. And I think just another point is that we often over-explain, and especially to young children, we get very wordy. We bring in a whole lecture. They can't process it. Their brains are not set up that way. It isn't helpful. It floods them with a lot of information. So I would say rather than give a whole explanation, if you want to add one or two words, Mommy was so tired today, or sorry, I would actually prefer you to say I was so tired today. Then that's okay, but don't launch into it when you make a mess and when you spill this and I got really upset, and just don't. Just stay in the apology, stay in the connection, and bring in other tools. Bring in physical tools, okay? Touch, body language, eye contact, your height, come down to their level. Communicate all the things that you're trying to communicate instead of through words, through your body, because that is the way that children can hear it much, much better, and they actually feel it. And the key here is that it's got to be sincere. If you're piling on fake empathy or a fake apology because you just want to move past this and get on with your evening, it will probably spiral into another triggering episode. So the key here is that you really got to let it go. You got to breathe into it. You've got to be doing the self-talk that tells yourself, he's just a kid. He's doing his best. I'm triggered because of my whole baggage. It's not really to do with him. And I'm going to deal with that this evening after he's asleep. I'm going to write about it, or I'm going to sing about it, whatever I do. Right now, I owe him to be the adult in the room.
Yes. And I think along the lines of the baggage, too, anytime I feel like I have a lot going on in my life, whether it's financial stress, whether it's relationship turmoil, whatever it is, those kids can feel that frustration. And I think it's so important to be positive around them and change your attitude, because they're so young and they don't need that. They don't need to know what an adult is going through. They need to worry about being children and keeping it simple.
I so agree. And that's not to say we can't be authentic, If you're going through a really hard time, you're under a lot of stress, it's okay to mention, I'm sorry, I'm a bit down today. My mind is somewhere else, or I feel a little bit stressed today. I'm going to lie down instead of play soccer with you. But the key is not to load that onto their shoulders. The key is not to say, you need to take care of me, or you need to be sensitive to me because of what I'm going through, right? Because our children do not need to take care of us. That's not what they're there for. They're not there to make us feel better or to reduce our stress. But it's okay to just be authentic and to show to them, look, today mommy's a little, I'm a little down, or I'm a little stressed. I'm sorry, my head's somewhere else, but you're great. It's nothing to do with you. I hope you'll forgive me being a little crazy today, but does not sometimes it's easy to pull them in, be like, oh, give me a hug, or make me a cup of tea, or be nice to me, right? Because I'm so stressed. And that, again, is being the adult and taking our own problems on by ourselves without our children's help.
Yes. Well, this show has been great, and I wanted to say that part of doing this, I wanted to give tips weekly, things that I've just come up with to deal with daily life, and to know that moms and dads deserve to have their alone time. And I think we have a comment in the audience that Arizona wanted to show.
I just wanted to, real quick, we had two people who shouted out in the audience, Blair, and the other one was Ron Snowberger. So I just wanted to take a minute and say hi and thank you. If you are watching and you want a shout out, just go ahead and let us know. We have quite a few viewers, but those two were the ones that shouted out at us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank y'all so much for watching us. So anyway, back to going, I wanted to share tips weekly on my personal advice on how to get a break, because all parents need a break. All parents are stressed and get worn thin, and we need our own time. My suggestion for this week, or my advice, something that really worked for me, was I noticed that my mornings are such chaos. Everybody's going to get up and be ready for school. Sometimes I've got to run here or there, and I've got two in school, and I've got a baby. So how do I keep that better organized, and how do I wake up with a better attitude? And my solution was, if I get up an hour or hour and a half earlier than the kids do, no matter how tired I am, no matter how much I want to lay in bed and go back to sleep, if I have that time for me, and I can either read, drink my coffee, do something for me, I wake up much happier. My attitude is, way different. And those kids are, their attitude changes too when mommy's not running around like a chicken with her head cut off, And that I strongly, strongly recommend that parents, and I know it's hard because you don't always have someone to watch your kids, but take advantage of the times when they're sleeping or when they're occupied to do something for yourself, other than cleaning, other than laundry, something for you.
I love that.
I do too, and I'm so glad you realized that, Amanda. It is huge.
Oh, it took me a long time because I felt guilty. I felt like, oh, I could be spending time with them, or, oh, I just want to go back to bed. But I realized there was such a positive outcome from doing that for me.
Yep. So I think our time is about up. It went fast.
Yes, it did. And Avital, it was so great talking with you, and I hope we can do it again.
I hope so too.
I can learn a lot from you.
And I from you. Thank you guys so much. This was really wonderful.
And thank you. And we appreciate everybody who watched us today. And as we get this show running, things will go a little bit smoother. Like I said, this is our first time, so we look forward to the future and the things that we can share and learn from each other.
Fabulous. Congratulations on the new show, guys. This was great.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.